Welcome back to the Ancestral Findings podcast. Today, we're going to spend some time with a man who stood right next to one of the most important figures in American history, Abraham Lincoln, but who most people barely remember. His name was Hannibal Hamlin, and he was Lincoln's first vice president. What makes his story so interesting isn't just that he was left off the ticket the second time around. It's also how deep his roots go in this country, how strong his convictions were, and how he stuck to his values even when it cost him. Let's take a walk through his life, starting before he was even born. Hannibal Hamlin came from old New England stock, really old. His family was already here way back in the early 1600s. On his dad's side, the Hamlins traced their American lineage to James Hamlin, who arrived in Massachusetts around 1639 and settled in Barnstable on Cape Cod. This wasn't just some footnote in a dusty family Bible. His descendants spread out through New England, becoming farmers, doctors, ministers, people involved in their communities. Now Hannibal's father, Dr. Cyrus Hamlin, was part of that tradition. He was a Harvard-educated physician, but he didn't just see patients. He served as a surgeon in the Revolutionary War, and after that he spent time as a farmer and a member of the Massachusetts state legislature. He had that classic New England mix of brains, patriotism, and hard work. Hannibal's mother was Anna Livermore, and her family was just as old and just as rooted in early American life. She was the daughter of Reverend Elijah Livermore, another name well known in local circles, and her ancestors included early settlers like John Livermore, who came to Watertown, Massachusetts in the 1630s. So when Hannibal was born on August 27th, 1809, in Paris Hill, Maine, which was still part of Massachusetts back then, he came into the world with generations of civic-minded, religious, and educated New Englanders behind him. His home life reflected that. Books were everywhere. His parents pushed education, service, and faith, but this wasn't some polished city life. Paris Hill was rugged, rural Maine. That meant chores, cold winters, and a close-knit community where people helped each other out. He went to Hebron Academy for a bit, but he never went to college. Instead, he learned law by reading in a Bangor law office, which was how a lot of people did it back then. He passed the bar in 1833 and started practicing law in Hampton, Maine. That same year, he married Sarah Jane Emery. She came from another political family. Her father, Stephen Emery, would later become Maine's Attorney General. Hannibal and Sarah had 4 children together. Sadly, she died young in 1855. 2 years later, Hannibal married her half-sister, Ellen Vesta Emery, and had 2 more children. The Hamlins were very much a part of Maine life and politics. Now let's talk about how he got into politics. It didn't take him long. By 1836, he was only in his mid-20s, Hamlin was elected to the Maine House of Representatives. He served multiple terms and then moved up to the national stage. In 1843, he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, and 5 years later he was appointed to the U.S. Senate. Here's the twist. At that time, Hannibal Hamlin was a Democrat. But as the debate over slavery grew more intense, Hamlin's views started to pull him in a different direction. When the Kansas-Nebraska Act passed in 1854, allowing slavery to expand into new Western territories, Hamlin had enough. He left the Democratic Party, risking his career, and joined the new Republican Party, which was forming largely around the idea of stopping the spread of slavery. That took guts. He had seniority, he had a seat, and he walked away from it to stand for what he believed. In 1856, he was elected governor of Maine, but he didn't stay long. Just a month after taking office, he resigned and returned to the U.S. Senate. It sounds odd today, but it was a political move to keep himself in play at the national level, and it worked. In 1860, when the Republican Party picked Abraham Lincoln to run for president, they wanted someone to balance the ticket. Lincoln was from Illinois, what was then the West. They wanted someone from the East, someone experienced, someone who had switched parties over slavery. That person was Hannibal Hamlin. So in March 1861, as Lincoln was sworn in, so was Hamlin. He became the 15th Vice President of the United States. But here's the thing. Back then, being vice president wasn't the kind of job it is now. He didn't have much power or influence. He presided over the Senate, and that was about it. He wasn't close to Lincoln. They respected each other, but they weren't buddies. They didn't even meet until after they were elected. That didn't stop Hamlin from pushing his beliefs. He supported using black troops in the Union Army, something that was controversial at the time, but would later become official policy. He also believed in taking tough action against the Confederacy, but again, he was mostly on the sidelines. Then came the 1864 election. Lincoln, running for a second term, dropped Hamlin from the ticket. Instead, he picked Andrew Johnson, a Southern Democrat from Tennessee who had stayed loyal to the Union. It was all about political strategy, trying to win the support of border states and show national unity. Hamlin was stunned. He thought he had done the job well, and he had. But politics is brutal sometimes. Lincoln won re-election, and then just a few weeks into his second term, he was assassinated. Andrew Johnson became president. But if Hamlin had stayed on the ticket, it would have been him. Just imagine how different Reconstruction might have looked under a President Hamlin instead of Johnson. After leaving the vice presidency, Hamlin didn't quit. He returned to the U.S. Senate in 1869, where he served until 1881. He wasn't flashy, but he was respected. People knew he stood for what he believed. He also supported civil rights for newly freed black Americans, and he fought against political corruption. In 1881, President James Garfield appointed him minister to Spain, kind of like an ambassador. Hamlin gave it a shot, but wasn't impressed. He didn't enjoy diplomatic life, so after about a year, he came back home to Maine. In his later years, Hamlin lived quietly in Bangor, Maine. He was well-liked, active in the community, and enjoyed spending time at the Tarratine Club, a local gentleman's club. It was actually there, on July 4th, 1891, that he passed away while playing cards with friends. He was 81 years old. His children continued the family's tradition of service. His son, Charles Hamlin, served in the Union Army and was present at Ford's Theater the night Lincoln was assassinated. Another son, Cyrus Hamlin, was a brigadier general who helped organize and lead black troops during the war. Hamlin was laid to rest in Mount Hope Cemetery in Bangor, a peaceful, tree-lined spot not far from where he lived most of his life. So that's the story of Hannibal Hamlin, a man born into the heart of old New England. A lawyer, a senator, a governor, a vice president, and a person of principle who walked away from the safety of his political party when it mattered most. He stood with Lincoln, even if he wasn't invited into the spotlight, and he might have changed the course of history if he'd stayed on the ticket in 1864. He may not be a household name today, but Hannibal Hamlin was the kind of leader who helped hold the country together in its darkest hour. That's why he's part of the Forgotten Seconds, and why his story is worth remembering. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time as we explore another vice president who got close, but never crossed the threshold into the presidency.